This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. I'm going to be your main host today, your moderator, Bud, here with Moneyball Ross, Data Mike, and the seasoned veteran, the Silver Fox himself, George, as well. And we're going to be going over our topic today. Boys, how are we doing, though? We having fun? Everybody having a good week? Mike's out in the woods again. Northern Michigan, it's 66. He's got a t-shirt on, I think.
I do.
Or no, do you have one? Yeah, you got a t-shirt on. It's 66 here where I am, and I've got a sweater on with pants, and I'm a little shivering. I'm about to put the blanket around me.
You spent too much time in Florida.
He's a Florida boy for sure.
You're weak.
I love it. Well, George, thanks for joining us today, my man. We appreciate having you back on the pod again.
Great to be
Big
back.
Guy. Yes. So today's topic, we're going to go into how real change takes hold in sales teams. And the kind of idea behind this is that too often sales teams, or really anybody, you could take this around change management as a topic in general. It's like, feels like things are being done to you. We've got PowerPoint training, mandatory stuff, the top-down, focus and effects of like, oh man, I got to do this, where you just have to force yourself through this. But really, this is about we want to introduce some ideas around like, how do we actually drive adoption? What might set the stage to actually get change to take hold at an operation when you want to do change or when you want to start something new. And really, we'll kind of start with what I think is the first jumping off point, is that trust is a big driver behind this. And that if you have trust of your team, you can get almost anything done. And if you have a struggle bus with trust, then you're going to have a hard time moving forward. So George, on your end, when you're thinking about this, or if a client's thinking about making a change to a process or implementing a new piece of technology, or they just want to do a complete overhaul of a way they go to market, because that's happening in a lot of wholesalers and distributorships right now too. Where do you think trust falls in the equation? Is that pretty high up on your list too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a factor of, we'll talk more about it, but, kind of foreshadowing a bit. I think everybody once heard it said this way: everybody listens to the same radio station, WIIFN, and that's what's in it for me, right? So there's always that personal factor, and that implies the trust that's built into it. For sure. And Ross, you've done a bunch of changes at operations too. You've changed routing structures. You've changed to the way you've done your compensation when you were running your distributorship too. You've dealt with a bunch of change as well. Where does trust land in your lap as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's you teed off with the idea that you want to minimize, or there's a lot of change elements, but you want to make sure that whatever change you're doing is very intentional and it's rooted in something logical and well explained. For example, in the distributor that I helped run, it was explaining that it was this, or we were starting, having to make some more serious cuts, right? So we could either grow our way out of it together and minimize cost our way out together, or we're going to be forced to make some bad decisions. So again, I think transparency and alignment, I think George is absolutely right. What's in it for me? But that's part of it too, right? If the company is struggling, we have debt covenants issues or whatever it might be, or, the market's soft, trends are declining, costs are exploding, healthcare, et cetera, then these are things that, don't hide things from your team. I mean, you'd be surprised what they can understand, and it helps them contextualize what's happening and why you're doing it. The why is important. I feel like that is the case.
Team can smell the fear on your breath. And Mikey, you've dealt with a bunch of change with me And yeah, I used to say like change is constant, right? Like
Change is constant with Bud.
My personality is that I'm not scared of change. I enjoy it. I'm a tinkerer and a tweaker. It's one of the more frustrating things about being around me probably on a regular basis. And you had to cope with a bunch of that too, as well, Mikey.
Yeah, and I think we've started off at a great spot with trust, right? And I think that's why it always worked at our operation, is because you had that trust, not only from me but from the whole entire team. And
We turned that. We
what's
turned
that?
that right around you, Bud. I mean, did you explain to Mikey and team that, I mean, you had essentially declining margins,
Yeah.
increasing costs, you had volume compression, margin compression. I mean, were you transparent about that with the changes?
One of the meetings that we had, Mikey, you'll remember this too, was when we were doing a reroute. And this was when Lou was retiring, Mike. And we were going to have a driver retire. And we chose to reroute. And I fought really hard with you and Brad and Tom over we needed to cut Lou's route. He was only delivering 70 some odd thousand cases off of a side load. Capacity for a side load is all of 130 to 150 if you're even halfway decent at move and pace. And we had brought all the drivers in. It was like, Lou's going to retire in 2 months and we're going to do this as a route. And there was disgruntled, notions around the room. But I said, hey guys, like I would love to be that this was the 90s and I'd be the one that was telling you business is growing and we're going to add a new route and that we're going to take work off your plate and we're going to get you helpers and we're going to do all this. But that's not the world we live in. You guys know that your trucks are getting lighter and lighter and lighter. Lou's peeled off routes and made you guys' routes bigger, and we've allowed him to do that, but we cannot afford to run an additional truck at 70,000 cases a year. There's not enough capacity there to pay for it. Yeah. So we have to take those 70,000 cases, move more to the bulk route. We took the bulk route from like 150 to over 200,000 CEs on an annualized basis, and we moved everything else off to the rest of the group. And you have to confront the elephant in the room when that happens. And I remember, I don't know if you remember the meeting as vivid as I do, Mike, but I remember Larry being pissed about it. And as soon as we had that serious conversation around, I wish that I could add a new driver, but we don't live in that world. It was a reality check for the whole room around this is just what we have to contend with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the puzzle piece that we're missing here with the story to put it all together is we had already trusted you as a group, as an organization. You had already earned and gained our trust. To the point to where we actually had a saying, in Bud we trust, right? Whenever a new change would come. And I
never said that to me in person.
No, that's probably news to you too, but
just make that up, Mike.
100% truth. And behind the scenes, you had already, I mean, like you said earlier, you don't mind change. You actually love it, right? So there was a lot of changes that had already had happened.
Yeah.
And you had explained the why. And then we had watched it come through exactly like you said. It's going to be better on the other side. This is why we're doing this, why we need to do it. You might not agree with it. You might not understand it now, but trust me. And we did, right? So we did. And every time something new would come up, Tom and I, or even Brad, or some of the sales reps, we look at each other like, what the fuck, man, this is never going to work. And we would just go, in Bud we trust, right? So I think that was the most important.
I've never heard you say that before.
Well, yeah. And then shortly after is when the Bud for President.
Mike, you don't have to kiss his ass anymore.
Exactly.
I know.
I'm not gonna let him fire you. So fire away here.
When I talk about Mike to other folks, and Mike, hey, remember, if you ever bitches and moans about his job, he said yes to working with me, not just once, but twice. So it's all on him at this point.
Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice.
He owns this fuck up all on his own. For sure.
Hey, in Bud we trust. That's all I have to say.
Last week he was the they.
Yeah.
This week it's Bud we trust.
I'm a nightmare. Most people do know that about me. And this is also the same crew that I was pissed off one day, and Sandy said, "Hey, you're acting a lot like your mom today, big guy." That was a tougher pill to swallow.
I'll leave it to Sandy to tell you. Right?
Have you ever tried that in an argument with your wife, Bud?
I have not. No, that is.
I don't recommend that one.
There are certain. Yeah, it sounds like you have, Ross.
I know it's even further than calm down.
Yeah, there's definitely one thing that stops the conversation. All Kim has to say to me is, "You're acting like your father," and all I have to do is, "You're acting like your mother." and it either
Oh.
explodes or just immediately the conversation just comes to a screeching halt.
Oh man.
So it's one thing to have the trust, but Mike, for you, maybe we pitch this to you first. If you're a leader listening to this and you're like, man, I don't think that I have the trust, or I'm worried that I don't have the trust, what's the first few things you might be able to do to start to gain the trust of the team that you have in front of you?
I have to think back to you because obviously, you came in shortly after college into the organization, and your mom and your dad had been running it, and you obviously didn't walk through those doors with all of our trust. So you had to go through that and
No, I had
earn
a
our
silver
trust.
spoon in my mouth.
Well, yeah, but you also didn't. I mean, they didn't hand you the trust; they handed you the keys of the building, but not the not the employees' trust. But what I think really worked, and what made it happen for us was the pure transparency. Right? You really peeled back the curtain on a lot of things. We had open door meetings, and we learned more about the business than just, hey, here's some medicine. Right? Trust or change is like medicine where you take it from the top down. Right? Close your eyes, plug your nose, swallow it, get through it. You'll be fine. Right. I mean, that's what we tell our kids when they take some bad medicine. And I think that's how a lot of organizations, and I know that's how our organization pre-Bud really made some changes in it, and it didn't go so well. But I think peeling back the curtain like you did, not only explaining the why, which is super important, but giving us a view into your life, your role at your desk, right? Why are these changes happening? This is why, because this is what I see in my desk. Might be what you guys are seeing over in your desks, and I think that really helped. And then when you gained our trust as middle managers, right? And then where does that go? That flows down to the sales reps, all the way down to the street level merchandisers, because once you had our trust and in Bud we trust, whatever, you could have said, hey, you know what? We're going to take half of this building and move it across the street because it makes financial sense. We're like, hell yeah, let's do it. Who's going which way, right?
You're going to take it apart brick by brick too.
Yeah, because you had slowly earned our
Yeah.
trust to a point to where even if we didn't understand why you're doing it and didn't see it and didn't
We're
think
going to have to
about
cut half of this ass kissing episode.
There's a lot of ass kissing here.
I don't mean it, but I mean honestly, because this is truth. I don't need to kiss your ass anymore, but but no, I mean that's my closest story to it because we lived through it. Honestly,
So George,
I was going to say, I was going to jump on George here and be like, somehow, but we've become old. I don't know how that is. We have stories from the
One day at a time, brother. One day at a time.
exactly.
But we're trumped by another person on this call.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, like how the evolution of the workforce has played out across your career, George. Specifically, I mean, I think you've seen the boomers hand to the X, to the millennials, and now here we go to, what is it, Z, the Zoomers. So I think that I'd be curious to know, your take on where things were before even mine and Bud's time, and how you've seen the general workforce change, and then also how it pertains to the ownership cycle in these distributors.
But I think there's a couple of dynamics there, right? So kind of tying back to it, right? Trust is earned, right? So if you don't have that trust going into it, right, you're gonna have to build that, right? And I think one key way that I've seen folks do it too is that don't come at this as that we have a problem and you're a part of the problem. It's like we've got a challenge and you're a part of the solution, right? So you just change that dynamic and everybody kind of leans in and rolls up their sleeves, right? But if you look back across, I think the fundamental change too is that very much early on is command and control, right? There was not a lot of questioning. It was like I was told what to do and that's what I do. That's why I'm here. And then now kind of come, down through all the changes, it's very much more a collaborative approach. It's not a do what I say. It's how do I engage you to be, again, part of that solution.
When you're engaging people as part of that solution, George, you did a lot of work as an outsider, like any trick where you came into an organization where you're implementing a new piece of technology or you've sold a new piece of technology, any tricks of the trade is like how you can build rapport and trust very quickly with folks. because you as an outsider would need to do that on a regular basis as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think one of the things that's always paramount though is you've got to engage. It can't be like, hey, we're going to do this, and that comes from leadership, and then they go away, right? So you need to institutionalize that change first off, right? And so it says, here's what we're doing, but I think the key thing is what's the benefit? Help people understand their role in that change, and guess what? Be very clear and transparent that there's trade-offs, right? We're going to gain some efficiencies here, but we might trade off something somewhere else. But if you paint the big picture and you help people understand where they fit into that picture and how they contribute, then they understand like, hey, I'm giving a little to get a little, or vice versa.
Yeah. The process of getting people to understand why and what you're trying to get done from a why reason is something I probably leaned into more than anything else, as Mike kind of gave some specific examples. And Ross, you've got a little bit of a personality like me where you're more Professor Ross a lot of times, and you do a really nice job of talking people through why we're doing things as well. And I think that vibes with our personalities as maybe teachers first in some ways, not necessarily. I think we do it in a way that's not necessarily like lecture from the front of the class, but more like teachers of, we're trying to bring you into the fold of like, this is why we're seeing the world this way, so we can collaborate together on what the next outcomes are and what they need to be.
I mean, I tend to have a high trust in people's abilities to, everybody's got different skill sets, personalities, and, just general, IQ, intelligence, problem-solving abilities. But I trust humans to, under the right circumstances, make the right decisions. And I think that's an ethos that we share. I mean, I think your saying is, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I think you stole that probably from Buffett or somebody.
Charlie Munger.
There you go.
Yep.
But I think that you and I both have that feeling that, hey, if you need to trust people. If you can't trust people, then, well, certainly they're not going to trust you.
Yeah.
But second of all, I think that this generation especially requires the why. Otherwise, the command and control aspect, it just doesn't resonate with this generation. At least that's my feeling.
And I'm convinced that all generations want to know why. It's just that the traditionalist generation, which would be in their 80s and 90s, and the boomers, just that, though, they and the Xers, they tolerated not being told why better than the millennials and better than the Gen Zers. They just chose, or were engineered, or were raised to just say, to tolerate it better. And we were told as millennials we could grow up and be anything. We could be a cloud or a dinosaur or a cat or whatever we wanted to be. And that's why we have these weird opinions about why we want to know why the hell, what's going on. Why, right? Why? We need to get him to say that into a microphone so we can play it every now and then.
Yeah, we need
as
a
background
sound clip of Brad. Why?
I love it.
You gotta get one of those button boards,
Yeah.
The sound effects, that's one of them.
So tactically, one of the things that, if you're listening to this and they're like, so I want a little bit of a tactile tool to use, is called the adoption curve or crossing the chasm. There have been books written on this. It's a strategy. There's a tactic around it. And the way that I like to think about it is that you've heard these words before, like early innovators and early adopters, early majority, late majority, and the laggards. And a lot of time this is applied in terms of technology adoption. And think of it through the lens of, if you're listening, like, how long does it take for somebody to adopt a new technology like a flat screen TV? And why do people buy $40,000 flat screen TVs when in 3 or 5 years they're going to be half that cost or even less? And this would have been back to the probably in the mid 90s to the early 2000s when they cost that much. And the reason why is because it, as an innovator or an early adopter, spending that kind of money on something says something about me. If you flip this around and you think about this in terms of driving change, if you can get your early adopters at your team, and if you can get your innovators at your team to do well and to move in this direction with you, they will over time drag the rest of the organization through the change, through their wake. in some way, shape, or form. So, Mikey, you're shaking your head on this. So this is connecting with you.
Yeah.
How does that
perfect.
vibe with you as like a tactile think about?
I think it hits the nail on the head. We all know who those people are in our organizations. They're the influencers. It's just like social media. If I want to get something out on social media, my brand or whatever it may be, my viral video, I'm going to go after the influencers. I want those influencers to support me. Same thing within the organization. We know who those those influencers are. They're the ones on the group text, the anti-management or behind the scenes getting the group chats going. But you get those people on board, then that's going to go so much further. It's kind of, it's sales 101, right? And it's more than just, hey, this is what we're doing and this is kind of why I think we're going to do it. It's you're selling it to them. You're selling the idea. You're selling the change. I think about that now with my kids and my wife. Hopefully she doesn't listen to this so she knows my tactics. But if we want to do something or we want something, and Hannah will come to me like, hey, I think we should really go do this. I'll say, don't say anything to your mom. I'll sell it to her. Right. And I'll start selling it to her with the benefits prior to the pitch of, hey, I think we should do this. And the same thing within the organization. If we're looking to sell in some change, we have to take it right to the streets, right to the account, just like we would sell in a new product there.
Yep.
I mean, since we're on the topic of blowing smoke up Bud's ass, I think
let's hear it.
I think another good analogy, and I think the adoption curve of AI, and specifically, I think of somebody like you, Bud, and you tend to be on the front end of adoption, especially around AI, and it's really generated additional capabilities for your efficiency. You're able to do 2 or 3x what you used to be able to do by properly using AI. So I think that's, and it's dragged most of us in our company kicking and screaming into the same world as you across a lot of different spectrums. But what's really driving it is, you're gaining additional productivity and efficiency. And, you're basically, the idea is that the rest of us look at that and say, shit, we need to adopt that too.
Yeah.
Because we can see the net benefit. You were the first one to run through the door, whether it be through AI note taking, the way you generate prompts, the way you use different AI tools. But I think that it's the same thing within the organization. If your leaders come out the gate, adopt it, and they benefit, the idea is that the mid group and the laggards will see the net benefit and essentially be forced dragged, compelled, whatever word you want to use, into that world, simply because the cost versus benefit is the ratio there is too compelling. They must adopt, or they're going to fall behind.
Yeah,
and maybe even end up fired. So who knows? Or
well, we've listened to a couple podcasts. We listened to one of those same podcasts together, and that point that the All In podcast made around AI back in a year and a half ago was, this is like the mid 90s. I think Friedberg said it. It's like, this is like the mid 90s. If you didn't learn Excel and didn't learn Word and didn't start to learn email in 1995, like, you exited the workforce. And if you don't learn how to use these tools that are coming to your world, you'll slowly exit the workforce. And it's just kind of the nature of the beast. And I'm too young to exit the workforce, even if people think I'm retired already.
Yeah, because people always use like cell phone adoption, color TV adoption,
like a physical adoption. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, physical goods. But I think AI is a good analogy for what we're talking about here, which is the benefits are just the people that adopted first kind of lead the way. And it's the net benefit or result or increase in productivity or increase in wealth that it comes from it that compels the rest of the group to kind of follow into it. It's just too much of a benefit not to do it.
George,
too much of a cost not to do it.
Yeah, George, as a seasoned veteran in the room, you've seen this kind of adoption curve play out over your career of working on implementing pieces of technology in the distribution space and selling pieces of technology into the distribution space. Is this vibe with you? Does this resonate with you? Where are the gaps that we're not talking about yet from your long history and knowledge here?
No, I think we're hitting the key points, right? I think there's a couple fundamental fallouts, right? You're going to always have like the group will spread out, right? You're going to get just the people that are, hey, I'm all in no matter what, right? Some blind ambition, right? Or just natural leaders, right? So those folks are going to take off. And then at the other end of the spectrum, right, you're always going to have the folks that are naysayers or what have you, right? They don't believe change. Let's face it, change is hard for everybody, right? Not to sound trite, it's the reality.
Yeah.
But you get that styration across the different groups, but what very quickly happens is that if you put an emphasis on those champions and the results that they achieve, they're going to drag other people along, right? I think there's always some level of natural, selection where people will self-select out or unfortunately not make the cut. But by and large, I think again, if you look at what I've seen is if you look at how you engage the team, and that has to be across all the levels, right? Leaders, senior leadership, middle management, and then the actual, the folks that have to execute, right, at the lowest level or what have you. They understand that bigger picture, and they see, hey, others can do this. Or if there's friction, right? There's change, there's discussion around it. It's not just like this, hey, just shut up and keep doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? Engage me. Again, we're moving something as we're hitting barriers, right? Or some rough spots, engage the team again, right? And it's also not hey, here's the direction, let me know when you get there, right? You've got a plan and you're executing against the plan, right? And people are measuring up against that and seeing again their contribution to the plan. And then don't the last thing I'd probably say is that plan, while it has to be pretty structured, it also has to be fluid enough to say, hey, we've got some unexpected things that have come out of that, right? And how do we, what's our contingency, right? So you got to have a contingency there, and then you got to act upon that contingency and engage folks, right? Because again, you set the plan, they're executing the plan, and if it's not working, well, what's not working, right? So engage them again, repeating, but make them part of the solution. The problem is not them; they're part of that solution.
You make me think of a story when we moved our route accounting system, and that was a huge lift. Mike, were you on the sales side when we made that transition already, or were you still on the ops side?
I was on the upside.
That's what I thought you were. And so you'll resonate with this, and you'll be able to help me fill in any gaps from my memory too. Like, I didn't realize it at the time, like how important middle management can be to making these things happen. And one of the key things that we needed to get done with our route accounting shift was we love Sandy. We've talked about her many times on the podcast. You probably have somebody, if you're listening to your organization, who is a Sandy, who is a tower of power. She knows everything. They know everything about the organization, and you go to them. And we needed to move that. We need to bring her down and spread those responsibilities out wide throughout the organization. And one of the key things that we did on accident was we had a lead man that we actually had conned into taking another quarter an hour to be an official lead man at the time. And that person needed to go from basically just picking up pieces of paper for their load plan for the night and then dueling them out to running a genuine computer program that was a voice pick program and dueling out orders from a queue to the voice pick through the voice pick plan. We had to hang a computer on the wall and all this stuff. And they had to learn, Brad was the lead man's name at the time. He had to learn this thing in like a day and a half and then start to use it almost immediately. And we got beer out the door. And I didn't give enough credit for how strong of a person he was at the time and how much he made that transition so much smoother than what it could have been. So even we talk a lot about middle management and we think team leads, but even these folks that have supervisory roles that might not be a managerial role are that important to driving this change as well.
Yeah, but the interesting thing too is that the technology can be stellar, right? Indifferent of what it is. But if you're not thinking through that change management, right? I mean, like you kind of touched on that, but what I've seen, for example, is like in automation, right? You fundamentally change those folks' role where they have a lot of flexibility, they have a lot of capability. If they're humping it, they're humping it, and if they need to hide, they can hide. And when you when you have, forms of technology, you can't hide anymore. So that lion that used to roam the savannah is now in a cage. And so, but you have to understand those dynamics, right? And you've got to look for how you're going to deal with those dynamics, right? And the piece of that is kind of coming back to it is like, hey, your role's going to change, and here's how you're going to contribute, and what that means to the organization, right? And ultimately, what that means for all of us, right? So you're a team member, right? And here's how you're going to engage in contributing to a new result.
I love it. Mikey, anything else you want to add around like middle management focus on this? We're kind of beating a dead horse at the same time because we almost always bring it back to middle management on the sales team in some way, shape, or form.
We do.
But it can't be said enough, right?
And that's why we circled back to it in the last probably 4 pods in a row, is how important the buy-in and the support from middle management is. Because that's your gateway. That's what's gonna flow right down to the reps, and have your support, trust, and all the way down to the reps. So I think it's super important here too. I mean, our middle managers are really important in our organization, and whatever way we're looking at them. So we need to support them in any way we can, and be there for them too.
Ross, when you're making these changes, and let's just move ahead a little bit to like where you're midstream or on the latter part of the stream here, and we're in the feedback loop where we're looking for information from the field or we're looking for information from the team where you started to implement these changes. Like, how do you start to, did you ever have a process that you would manage around like how you started to track the feedback loop and look at it with team on a regular basis? Or did you let that organically kind of come to you through open door policies and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think allowing people visible exposure, visibly seen, and I think we've talked about this to endless degrees on this podcast, and I think very recently about the idea of transparency. The transparency brings it out. And, a good story is somebody coming in and saying, hey, you've been out of stock on this, you're screwing me. Right? And I didn't have to go searching for that. That came to me, no problem. And it came from a place of, you're taking money out of my pocket. This was high profitability. It's moving. I placed it. Why aren't you ordering it? And I think that's a good example of it's bottom up, and it's unfiltered feedback, which is good because it's the feedback you want. It's the, hey, why are we doing this stupid discount? You're killing me here. You're right, that is a stupid discount. But let me explain to you why I have to do it. And why I don't just answer to the financial responsibilities of this company, I answer to some suppliers. And if we get too hot, we can say no a lot, but there's certain times we're going to have to say yes. And again, that's a great conversation to have because you're right, and I don't disagree with you. But let me give you the full picture.
Yeah,
I kind of just took us on a tangent there, but I don't know if that answers the question. But I think that my general guiding principle has been, build the correct structure, and the feedback will come. And it'll come in a way that's confrontational is not the right word, but blunt. And that's the way you want it.
Well, when people are willing to be blunt with you or direct with you, that means they don't have a fear of repercussions or reprisal against you. And that is one of the more important feedback theories or feedback processes that you can get in place as a leader. So if you can create that world where folks can come to you unprompted or prompted, I'm a big advocate that people prompt the feedback as well, that they're looking for it, then you can actually start to do something with it. If you are the senior leader, listen to this too. We also have to realize that you might not get every piece of feedback you're looking for. I rarely did, but I had Tommy and Mikey and Sandy and my middle management crew and Brad that were out there. They were able to ask questions and be inquisitive with the team and get things that I wouldn't have gotten on my own either. And that used to frustrate me, but Mike, you did a good job of like, it is the nature of the beast. You're not going to hear everything from everybody all the time. And you got to let us filter some of this for you. And you got to let us hunt some of this down for you.
And I think it's also lost too, is the idea of, and for lack of a better term, managing up. And if you're not senior leadership, if you're middle management, even sales rep level, it's how you frame things. It's that whole idea of sandwiching. You start out with something good, get into the negative, finish with something good. So management isn't just top down. You need to manage upwards. So you need to be the change or direction that you want it to be. So if you're trying to achieve something, the art of managing up is an important skill.
Yeah.
I feel
Lead
like-
by example. Yep.
I feel like Tommy
Lead by
and I
example
were,
and come in with logic and reason, and you'll be surprised how much more receptive upper management will be. That it's not emotionally charged; it's logically driven. It's this, then this, and then here's what we're going to be. Here's the net positive thing that's going to be when we make this change.
Yeah.
I feel like,
Mikey, you ran.
Come with solutions, not problems.
yeah, I was saying,
That's my biggest feedback. I can't tell you enough that you don't want to approach upper management with just problems. You don't want to just complain. You need to come armed with solutions.
and that's a great lead-in for what I was going to say. I feel like Tommy and I and most middle managers, they're translators.
Yes.
More often than none, right? There are things that we would hear from you and your dad, and we would have to translate that to get the buy-in from the sales reps. There were things that we would hear from the reps that we would have to translate for you to either get your buy-in or for you to understand too, right? It wasn't like, hey, and exactly what Ross just said, we couldn't have reps and warehouse reps or personnel and running straight to you and your dad with every problem, or hey, this is what we need to do better, or hey, if it was only like this, it would make my job easier, right? There has to be that translator, that middle person, that middle manager that takes that feedback and brings it up into their own words, or what makes most sense to senior leadership.
We definitely didn't need them run into the HR department at the end of the hall. So.
Speaking of not finding the HR department at this organization, I never found it at Hamlet's either. I mean, almost 24 years, and I've been up and down that hall so many times, never found the HR department.
That's something else Bud and I share.
George, on your world, common pitfalls, anything that you can think of as a top of mind, one or two punchy, hard hitting pitfalls that you notice from folks around trying to force change, trying to do it all at once, trying to convince everyone.
Yeah, I think, Mike really kind of touched on it, like the multiple roles that middle tier has to play. And I think one of the pitfalls I've seen is just assuming, like, again, you can skip that middle tier, right? And there's some dynamics that are inherent that those folks have between leadership and, in this, in our case, like the sales reps, that don't overlook those dynamics, right? And there's just sometimes a level of communication that can happen between a team leader and a sales rep, and it can be more open, and just leverage that, right? And I think the other thing too is that there's a level of, hey, that team leaders likely walked a mile in my shoes before, right? So they get it, right? So don't overlook the fact that how much that relationship has there. And that's probably the biggest one that I've seen. I think, implied in that too is they can resolve the conflicts, right? So as change is tough, right? And sometimes leadership is like, hey, things aren't going, as opposed to being, and again, you got to balance this, but as opposed to being like, okay, we got to change something dramatically, it's leverage that middle tier of folks to engage the sales reps, for example, and then help come back with a resolution, right? So don't tell them what the answer is, gain the feedback, engage the team leaders, and then, make the changes that you need to make. I think the other thing that's overlooked quite a bit is finding those internal champions, right? So we talk about lead by example, And so there's just that natural. So it's not like the hierarchical, chain of command for maybe an older used term, but it's just like, who are folks that are respected in the organization, right? That are just they get stuff done, and when they believe in it, all of a sudden their others are just drawn to them, right? Or people, it's their peer, so they're very comfortable talking to their peer where they may not be comfortable talking to others. And I've seen that overlooked.
Yeah.
And so that's probably another pitfall is sometimes it's those hallway conversations, right? Or backroom conversations that have a whole lot more power because it's a peer-to-peer kind of conversation.
For sure. Well, this is a great topic in total. So, like, kind of summary wise, trust is fuel. It's currency that's traded on these changes in bulk, at scale, and usually very quickly too. You're usually
Real
trading
time.
this
Yep.
trust incredibly quickly. To your point, George, just now, believers and early adopters, they're the fire that helps drive it. Middle management will carry the torch and move through the organization. I'd advocate anybody around middle management, like, maybe not be prescriptive to them around how to cope with the changes and how to cope with some of the pushback, but give them rules of the road of things that you're seeing as like, hey, don't make their responses by accident. Prime them with what reasonable and smart responses should be. And when they do get those questions, this is what I think about as a leader and how I think about this should be answered, and continue to prompt that person for additional feedback. And the last thing we didn't really talk about a lot, but like, I think you have to really kind of figure out and know just who your top performers are, George, and who your early adopters will be, just as much as who your most unengaged will be as well. And you got to also speak to those folks as the laggers of the laggers as well.
But I think if you instill, like, if you instill that I've empowered you to accomplish something by reinforcing the fact that you've empowered them to do something, really motivates people, right? You've given me a level maybe of responsibility that I never thought I had before, or that I never realized that I had before. That doesn't mean that, there's not boundaries, right? But it's empower them to be successful in this change.
Love it. It's a great place to end. So if you love what we're doing, check out the pod anywhere the pod is published. If you're listening, you're already listening to that, but share it with your friend. We're also on YouTube if you want to see our big ugly mugs and our backgrounds, which are a little chaotic from time to time and a little entertaining from time, as Mike had to move as the sun slowly came onto his face during this
Blasting
episode.
me. Need some
We
sun.
can barely see that, Ross. But you're the last week in Europe. Last week of Europe, Ross.
Yeah, I got one more week. I actually fly back next week today.
You gotta love it. One more week.
Venice. You can't even see it.
Nope. Well, if you like what we're doing, listen and subscribe, and also shoot us an email if you've got questions, listener questions, comments you want us to take on and tackle. It's info@vxptech.com. That's info@vxptech.com. We will be back again next week with more hard-hitting news and more hard-hitting facts for the beverage distributors out there in the world. I mean, we are part of the media now, right? Don't laugh at me. We're full-fledged hard-hitting media here.
Hard-hitting journalists here.
Media. I love it, boys. Well, you guys rock, and cheers.
Cheers.
See ya.